When you think of a horror movie, the first thing that comes into your head is probably death, killings, blood, iconic villain, and typical teenagers. These are just some of the conventions that horror movie, especially slasher movies, follow. Characters in a movie are very important in all genres, especially the horror genre. These characters all portray something different and effective that relates to the genre. Horror movies, they have very stereotypical characters and rarely challenge that stereotype. The slasher subgenre also uses these very specific stereotypes of characters, especially with teenagers. One of these types that is very commonly used is the princess. Not that type of princess, but this type of princess. The princess is usually a blonde ditzy girl that's very attractive and is the type of girl that every girl wants to be and every guy wants to date. She usually does drugs, she drinks, and she's probably sexually active. However, the princess is one of the first people to die, and it's very unusual that she will live throughout the movie. She will usually have a very horrific death, especially when the princess dies right at the beginning, because it's the opening death, so it has to be iconic. Let's take Nightmare on Elm Street, for example. The princess in that movie had a very iconic bedroom scene death, which now, to this day, everyone knows. We decided to use the final girl theory. The final girl theory has been featured in many iconic slasher movies, including Halloween and Scream. The final girl is usually the last remaining survivor, such as Nancy, and she is usually very feminine at the beginning. However, during the movie, she starts to get a bit masculine, and right at the end, she defeats the villain. She usually goes against the whole typical teenager type. She doesn't drink, she doesn't smoke, and she's probably not sexually active. We use these stereotypical teenagers in our trailer. We use the princess, and we also use the final girl theory. We also use other different types of stereotypical teenagers. We use the jock, who's an unbeliever character, the helper, and a wannabe. The best villains in horror movies are usually very iconic. When you think of the greatest horror movie villain, you're probably thinking of someone like Freddy Krueger from Nightmare on Elm Street, or Jason from Friday the 13th, maybe Ghostface or Michael Myers or Chucky. These villains have something that makes them stand out, that makes them different from each other. Say Freddy, he has the burnt face and the claw glove, which makes his character look different from other villains. Jason has his hockey mask. Jason, Ghostface, Michael Myers, and Leatherface, they all have masks. We saw that these villains all wore masks, maybe to hide their identity. So we decided to have our villain wear an iconic mask. We also tried to give him an iconic weapon, like most villains, such as Jason's big machete or Leatherface's chainsaw. We decided to give him 2 butcher knives, as these weapons, we thought in the very best horror movies, haven't been used yet. There are weapons similar to it, but there are no weapons exactly like them. In slasher trailers, usually the villain isn't shown. However, some of them show the villain, especially if the villain is iconic. We decided to show our villain because we want our audience to know that there is a villain. Therefore, we went against the main convention. Another feature of a horror movie which is very important is the setting. The setting kind of makes the whole movie. Usually, horror movies have very specific locations and very iconic sometimes. Everyone knows Elm Street and you know the house. And Friday the 13th, they have Camp Crystal Lake. The most common places for horror movies to be set are places that are isolated, such as small communities and places that have a dark history, such as abandoned houses, hotels, and insane asylums. These are what most slasher and horror movies in general do. We chose a school for our location, as the school is empty and it's kind of secluded from society at night time, so therefore the teenagers inside the school are quite isolated from the rest of society. In the trailer, we also show the setting in the establishing shot to allow the audience to know where the whole film is taking place. Two other very important features of horror movies is the shots used and the type of lighting. The lighting that is used in most horror movies is low-key lighting. Low-key lighting creates shadows. In horror movies, it's very important to build up tension, and also in trailers. At times you may not want to reveal your villain, so the use of shadows can show your audience that there is a villain, but not actually show your villain. The use of shadows is used all across different types of horror movie subgenres, not just slasher movies. Even though low-key lighting is the main source of lighting for horror movies, high-key lighting can also be used, especially during the equilibrium of the movie. We used high-key lighting mainly due to the fact that it's very hard to create low-key lighting in a low-budget trailer. We were challenging the convention of not showing the villain, so we showed our villain. Therefore, high-key lighting should have been used to show our villain. The types of shots used in horror movies are very important, as they can create tension. Close-up shots and extreme close-up shots are used especially in horror movies. In trailers, the shots are usually fast-paced, however some of them start off slow and gain a faster pace, which builds up tension. That's what we decided to do to our trailer.